So, good morning. Today, what I would like to talk about on this episode of The Cross and Pen is prophecy. A good chunk of the Bible is filled with prophecy, as biblical scholars will tell you, and most will agree, that it's about a third or so of the Bible is all about prophecy. And there are many prophecies left to be fulfilled. And we live in exciting times today because a lot of those prophecies are starting to either be fulfilled or we can see pieces of the puzzle starting to line up so that those prophecies can actually come to fruition. And one of the things that I find interesting, having grown up in the 70s, is back in the 70s, everyone thought the rapture was going to occur. The 70s were a time where, really, having come out of the 60s, of the space program, technology had advanced to a level that people couldn't have imagined. Nothing compared to today, of course, but back in the 70s, no one could even imagine what we would have today. And so, because technology had advanced, because we were living in perilous times, thanks to people like Hal Lindsey's late great Planet Earth, a lot of folks really believed the rapture was going to occur sometime in the 70s. There were, in fact, people who went out and sat in lawn chairs because they thought they could figure out the date, and they were just waiting for Jesus to come back and take them up in the clouds. Well, I grew up with that. Now here we are, all these years later, and what's kind of fascinating to me is with today's technology, I can go online and I can look at scholars on YouTube, preachers, amateurs, anybody and everybody, people who have studied prophecy. And, people were talking about the Euphrates River. People were talking about the different earthquakes and volcanoes and pending volcano eruptions and all these different things that may or may not happen. And there's a common theme that I've seen that has caused me to stop viewing a lot of these videos and following a lot of these people. And the theme that I saw was that from a Christian perspective, these folks were really excited about the prophecy because for them, it wasn't so much that the prophecy was coming true and validating the Bible. It was that the prophecy was coming true, the rapture was going to happen, and we were going to be out of here before all this bad stuff happens. And that was really the underlying theme, that, oh, we're not going to be here. Kind of like, hey, we're out of here, And I thought it was really fascinating because nowhere in the Bible does it tell us to do that. It tells us to be watchful. Jesus said we should be watchful. He talked about how people knew the signs of the seasons, but they really didn't know the signs of what was going on. And interpret that as you will. But I think it's important to understand prophecy as a Christian because prophecy really validates the Bible. It's what separates the Bible from any other book. There's books out there that we can say maybe are predictive, maybe they're prophetic somehow, some way. Everyone wants to point to Nostradamus, and too much interpretation going on there for me. But from a conservative perspective, the Bible is really the only prophetic book in the world, and it's the only book that's predicted everything that's happened in human history. Now, some people want to debate that. That's fine. Go ahead and debate that. But when it comes to biblical prophecy, and it comes to all these scholars, the current theme is that they're excited because we're getting closer to the tribulation. And really, depending on how you want to look at it, there's different perspectives, and I'm not going to debate the different perspectives. But generally speaking, a lot of Christian theologians and pundits all feel that when the tribulation comes, the rapture is going to happen before that. A lot of people believe in what they call pre-trib rapture. There's some people mid-trib, post-trib, whatever. I'm just going to stick with pre-trib for now. So looking at the prophetic alignment that these folks are studying, they're saying, well, the stage is being set for the tribulation. All these things are happening. And because we're getting closer to the tribulation, well, we're getting closer to the rapture. So they're getting excited. And this is just like the 70s. Hey, let's get the lawn chairs. Let's go sit outside. Let's go wait because all these bad things are about to happen. So too bad for the people who are going to be left behind. Too bad for them. We're out of here. And that's kind of the message. And I feel like, what? That's not really what Jesus said. He didn't say we should be so concerned about our departure that we shouldn't worry about the people here. In fact, the Bible talks about how the the rapture of the church and the tribulation is going to be staved off as long as possible so that everyone has the opportunity to come to Christ. Well, if that's true, then instead of looking at prophecy and looking at how things are lining up and saying, well, we're out of here, what we need to do is we need to realize, you know what? While we're here, we have the capacity for change. We have the capacity for things like what happened at Asbury University. It is not out of the question that a revival can occur in this country. And I think a lot of Christians have written that off. They've said, oh, there's no way we can have a Christian revival. Sure there is. What God do you believe in that you think there can't be a Christian revival? Hey, there was a guy, I forget his name, the Buffalo football guy whose heart stopped on that Monday night game. People stopped and prayed around him. A sports announcer, I think it was on ESPN, prayed on the air. Prayed on the air. In a country where liberals lose their mind when God is invoked. But that happened. Revival broke out at a university. But yet, here are these pundits, most of whom are a little bit older, keep that in mind, all talking about the tribulation. And they're talking about how close it is, and if the tribulation's almost here, they're kind of backing up in prophecy. They'll show you this window. They go, here's the tribulation, and then right before the tribulation, oh, it's the rapture. So if the tribulation's almost here, the rapture's almost here. Because you know what? They don't want to die. They want to just get caught up and go to heaven. Well, yeah, I mean, that's great. I'm there. I'm with you. I'd like that too. That would be great. But that's not really the message that the Bible gives. So, what we really need to do is we need to say, okay, prophecy's there, things are happening, and yeah, maybe it's going to be 50 years from now. Is it going to be 50 years from now? I don't know. I know when the Ukraine war broke out, everybody wrote Putin off and said, oh, okay, well, the end's here. Where we got a blood moon coming up, and Jesus does, God does everything on this massive time schedule. So yeah, next blood moon, yeah, that's Feast of Trumpets. That's when the rapture's going to happen. I've heard people say that. Well, guess what? We're still here. I'm laughing at them. Bible says no one knows. When the Bible says no one knows, not even the Son knows the time, the day, and the hour. That's significant. These modern day prophets, these modern day preachers and pastors, they need to get a clue, and they need to realize, you know what? Go back to what was part of the traditional church, what the disciples did. You know what? Your job is just to go out there and preach the word until one day, poof, you vanish off the face of this earth. Whatever day that is. If it's 100 years from now, it's 5 minutes from now, it doesn't matter. Get out there and evangelize. Because that's what the early church was all about. It wasn't about, well, let's study the Bible. Let's study the prophecy. Let's figure out how close we are so we can pack our bags. No, you're not going to pack your bags. Nobody packs their bags for eternity. The only way you pack your bags for eternity is by storing up treasure in heaven. And how do you store up treasure in heaven? Well, one, you go out and you evangelize. And you realize that as long as you're here, as long as there's breath in your body, if you're a believer, guess what? God's got a plan for you. Now, that plan could, like I said in a previous video, that plan could be simple. Not everybody's going to go out and be in the limelight and do these things that are visible by others. And that's okay. Because you know what? God needs people who can just live a simple Christian life and be happy and be at peace and be content. Because those people are a huge witness to others when they're going through difficult and trying circumstances. So, if that's your role, that's your role. Your role will become clear. God will let you know what your role is. At some point, he is going to make sure you know. He is not a God who is going to kind of sit back and say, well, maybe they'll figure it out, maybe they won't. If God's got a role for you, he's going to make sure you figure it out because he has that role planned for you, and he's had that role planned from you since before you even existed. So the job of Christians today and pastors and churches is to, hey, fine, study prophecy. I love studying prophecy. I think it's fascinating. It really is. When you see something on the news and you say, oh man, look, this is biblical prophecy coming to fruition. You know what that means? That just means that, hey, the Bible, as I know it, is true. I already know the Bible's true, but it's great because you know what? Then I can show other people. I can say, hey, let's turn in our Bibles. Let's look here, and we can see that, this verse here said that this was going to happen. And oh, look, it did happen. But all these people getting caught up, oh, the Euphrates River's drying up, and all these things are happening, and oh, what's going to happen? Oh, the four angels that have been cast into the Euphrates since the beginning of time are going to be let loose. I see all these things, and I laugh because you know what? We're trying to figure out something that is beyond human comprehension. We're told in Ephesians that, put on the full armor of God. Why? Because we're engaged in spiritual warfare. We don't even know what that means. We like to think we know what that means. It's the invisible world. It's stuff we can't see. However we want to classify it, but we really have no clue. We like to think we have a clue. We don't. No pastor has a clue what that means. No theologian can tell you what that means because they've never existed in the spiritual realm. They have no idea what that means. So when they try to tell me, oh, this is what that means, no, you don't know what it means. But I can tell you this, it's a lot different than what's going on in our life. And spiritual warfare is the ultimate warfare. And that's the warfare we're engaged in. And we need not get caught up in that. And that's what's going on with prophecy, is I see a lot of pastors, a lot of amateurs, a lot of people who are intending to do good. And I don't mean to criticize their intentions, because they are trying to educate. And they are trying to educate, and through that education process, bring people to Christ. And there's nothing wrong with that. But don't get so caught up in the prophecy and the prophetic events that you're going to turn around and lose sight of the main focus. The main focus is to go out there and do what God said to do, what Jesus said to do with the Great Commission. Go out there and make disciples of all nations, to baptize everybody, really to evangelize, to spread the word. If spreading the word means using prophecy to validate the Bible to somebody who doesn't believe, and kind of showing them, hey, the Bible is true, and here we can kind of prove that, by all means do that. If you feel like something that's happening in the world today is part of biblical prophecy, that's great too, because you know what? That just lends credence to the Bible. And we already know that it's true, because for decades and for centuries, man has tried to prove the Bible to be inaccurate, to be false, to be somehow lacking. And in every attempt that has ever occurred to disprove the Bible, it has failed. No one has ever disproven anything in the Bible. In fact, the more people have tried to disprove it, the more they've proven it. So the Bible is accurate. It is valid. We know that. So when we start to see these things happen in the world, and we see prophecy coming to fruition, great. Sit back, kind of go, yeah. Because we know that. We know God is a God of truth. And when he tells us these things are going to happen, we believe him. And then when they do happen, we say, okay, God said it would happen, it happened, just like all the other prophecies. But as Christians, I think what we need to do is we need to realize that, God gave mankind a lot of power. In fact, if we go back into Genesis and we look at the Tower of Babel, God makes a very interesting statement. He goes down, he says, let's go down and see what man is doing. And man's building this tower to reach up in the skies, to reach up into the heavens, to reach actually heaven and be near God. And God says, if as one people with a common speech and common language, they can do this, nothing that man attempts will be impossible. That's powerful. That's God saying that. That's nobody else saying that. God's saying that, hey, because we, at that time, before he scattered the people, before he changed their language, we were able to accomplish anything that we set our minds to. Now, if you look at all we've accomplished in human history, and probably the most significant accomplishments have occurred in the past, say, 100, 200 years tops, as far as technological advancements in every field, that's true. I mean, man has been able to do pretty much anything he has set out to do. It has taken time, and there's still things that we have not done, but because God said we have that capacity, it's true. Okay, let's twist that now to the church. Let's not give up on society because we feel like, oh, well, prophecy's telling us that the tribulation's coming and we're going to be out of here and too bad for you people. Let's realize, hey, maybe we have the capacity for revival in this country. I mean, we have the capacity for everything else. Why don't we have the capacity for that? And it was demonstrated twice recently. Once during the football game when that player got hurt, Olan, I think his name is. Don't quote me. And then what happened at Asbury. And I think that's just the beginning. I think this country is going to experience a huge revival in the coming years. But it can only happen if Christians realize that that's our goal. That's what we're supposed to do. That's our role in society, is to constantly evangelize, constantly preach the word, constantly let people know the Bible is valid. It's not to go out there and sit in a lawn chair and say, well, hey, we've only got 3 or more prophetic events to happen, so Jesus is coming soon, and we're going to try to, we're going to try to get it down to a narrow time period. And I've seen videos where there are people who say, well, the man can't know the day and the hour, but it doesn't mean we can't figure out possibly what week. It's going to be this week, the Feast of Trumpets, or, Rosh Hashanah, or Yom Kippur, whatever. I've seen those videos, and I think it's funny, because, you know what? We're being stupid. We really are. We are trying to outpace an omniscient God. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's important to understand what God said regarding Jesus coming back for his church. It's definitely important. But at the same time, we're not going to figure it out. Can we get close? I don't even know if we can get close. I think it's just going to happen when he wants it to happen. I don't think there's going to be anything we're going to see and kind of go, yeah, we're almost there. We're ready to line everything up. And it's right about here. We like to think that. Maybe that gives us comfort. Maybe we feel like we're mastering the Bible in some way because we can do that. But again, someone who grew up in the 70s, experienced a lot of this same kind of mentality. And literally, people in lawn chairs, that's true, you can look that up. There were people who sat outside in lawn chairs all day waiting because someone told them, hey, it's going to be on this day. This is the rapture. Jesus is coming back. I don't know why they had to sit outside in lawn chairs. They couldn't just be going about their business, because I'm pretty sure you don't have to be in a lawn chair for Jesus to take you to heaven. But for some reason, they thought they did. So I don't know. But I do know this. I've seen a lot of those videos. I don't think the intentions are necessarily bad, but I think the message that's coming across is incorrect. The message with prophecy is this. You study it. You pay attention to what's going on in the world, because Jesus told us to pay attention. He told us to be watchful, but at the same time, he commanded us what to do, and that is to go out into all the nations and make disciples of everyone. And we are to do that as long as we have breath in our bodies and as long as we're on this earth. If you're a believer, that's your job, is to constantly preach the word, whether it's just through how you act, whether it's actually sharing the word, whether it's a blog, a video, conversation, whatever the case may be. That's our goal, and that's what we're supposed to do. And the prophecy is a nice little extra that we can use to evangelize. It's something we can take comfort in because we know the Bible's true, and we can watch for those things. And yes, we should be excited to think, yes, Jesus is coming back. But we shouldn't be so excited to think that Jesus is coming back that we're going to be out of here and people are going to be left behind to suffer in the tribulation, because that's not what Christians should want, because that's not what God wants. So if God doesn't want that, we shouldn't want that. God is going to wait till the absolute last possible second before he takes his church from this planet. And he's going to do that because he wants no one to suffer, because he has that much love for his creation. And we should emulate that love, and we shouldn't want anything less than what he wants. So, message for today is prophecy is good, but let's not get too caught up in it. Let's do what we're supposed to do and realize that, yes, revival is possible. Anything is possible while we're still here and breathing, because if God is with us, really, can anybody ever be against us?